The views expressed on the Nova Society are those of the panelists and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Phoenix Research Institute or any institution which any panel member is associated. Reproduction or dissemination, other than for the purpose of education or information without the express written permission of the Phoenix Research Institute or Nova Society Media, is strictly prohibited.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Nova Society. I'm your host, Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, and the panel is here, Dr. Scott Gershwer and Dr. Mark Bound. Today, we are going to be answering listener emails and discussing a very important and pressing issue happening in the United States. The Trump regime and their refusal to adhere to the federal judge from Rhode Island who has issued an order and reissued the same order to the federal government, applying to the entire federal government, that all freezes on federal funds that the regime has frozen, they are to be thought out and distributed immediately. And apparently the regime has indicated, oh yeah, we did that, but they have not done that. And the judge has made it very clear that that is to happen immediately. So at the moment, this is where we are. The next step, I guess, is contempt of court, federal marshals, perhaps. So we'll see. What are you hearing?
Okay. Well, okay. We're both looking at each other. I think the first thing that we have to understand is that this judge, any judge, does not wake up in the morning, sit down to his coffee and his piece of toast and look at the paper and say, hey, I'm going to make a ruling about this. I don't like what that federal government is doing. What happens is somebody brings a case before the court and the judge must make a decision. So to say that these judges are, as J.D. Vance has indicated, our vice president, that the judges are the ones that might be causing a constitutional crisis in this case, that's really not the case. Because again, Judge so-and-so just does not get up and say, hey, I just saw this in the local news. I dislike it. I'm going to, basically make a ruling on it just arbitrarily. That's just not the way it works. So somebody brought the case, and the judge looks at it from the point of law and puts a stay or does not. So this idea that, this is some arbitrary thing is just simply not the case.
I believe these are like 22 states attorneys general who brought the case.
Well, yeah, but again, it's simply a matter of people having this idea, well, these judges are rogue, or they're just going out there and overstepping. And the fact is that no, somebody even the Supreme Court, they have to have a case by somebody brought before them. They don't just go out and pick these things and say, oh, I don't like this or I don't like that. That's not the way it works. That is the way the judicial system works. So those people that believe that the judges are the ones causing the issue, get your head out of your butt and learn something about how the judicial system actually works. And that is exactly how it works. Somebody brings it before. Judges don't just make these arbitrary decisions just because.
Yeah, I agree. Here's the thing. There are three branches of government, and two of them are Trump's, right? Because it really doesn't seem like John Thune is doing anything. And my understanding of John Thune, who's the Senate Majority Leader, is that he's not a Trumpy. He doesn't like Trump, but he's got to learn to live with him because he's a reality. And he's hoping that Trump is over as quickly as possible and they can get back to normalcy again. But while he's not, he's going to do the minimum that he has to do to either oppose or confirm what Trump is doing. In the House, Mike Johnson is a closer adherent to anything Trump wants to do. Right. So we don't have until the legislative part of this comes out. Right. And we're still in executive order lands, and executive orders are basically, as somebody once described them, press releases with a little punch. And the executive orders, generally speaking, ask for an inquiry or a review of something that Trump wants to get done, or any president wants to get done, and it's up to other people to do these things. So whether he puts out a press release or an executive order saying that the Gulf of Mexico should now be the Gulf of America, right? It's like we're going to put together a panel to determine whether the Gulf of Mexico should be renamed the Gulf of America. Same thing with all these other more important things that he's doing, like freezing funding for USAID or freezing funding for the Consumer Financial Review Board. And these are important things. And with no legislative branch working against him, it's up to the judiciary to uphold the law, right? Which Trump doesn't really care about. And so you see these judges are coming out now and making these orders and telling him to freeze or unfreeze the freeze. And now you have Elon Musk putting a tweet out there saying, I'd like to propose that the worst 1% of appointed judges is determined by elected bodies be fired every year. This will weed out the most corrupt and least competent. Now, the word corrupt is interesting because they keep talking about this in terms of what they're finding, right? What DOGE, DOGE, which is the Department of Government Efficiency, that they made up and staffed with Elon Musk. Now that Vivek Ramaswamy is gone, it's just Elon and his people. And what Trump said yesterday in that crazy press conference that they had with Elon Musk's kid riding on his shoulders is they're finding so much fraud, waste, and abuse. Fraud, waste, and abuse. So fraud is a legal term, right? And it's up to the courts to decide if something is fraud, right? You accuse somebody of fraud, you arrest them or subpoena them, or bring them in front of a court, and the courts decide that there's something called fraud going on. As of yet, we've seen none. None of this has happened. So there's no fraud. I mean, if there is fraud, they haven't put it out yet. And the second one was waste. Now, waste is largely in the eye of the beholder, right? Something that is wasteful to Elon Musk might not be wasteful to Lindsey Graham, let's say, okay? So waste is something that you kind of have to hash out amongst yourselves and try to figure out whether it's wasteful or whether it has an actual benefit to somebody who's a stakeholder who deserves to have that. And then the last part is abuse, which is a relatively meaningless term in this context, because what does abuse mean? Again, this is just, Trump's airing of the grievances where he says he's being abused by people. So the judges are doing their jobs. They're unfreezing the freezes. They're telling people that they can't, don't take the deal yet, right? To get 8 months pay for doing nothing, for retiring early. Don't do that yet. And it's angering the Trump people. So I read you the one from Elon Musk, right? He wants to start doing reviews of appointed judges as determined by elected bodies. He doesn't say what that is. Presumably it would be somebody who he agrees with. Then J.D. Vance comes out with another one, right? And I don't know if this is coordinated or not, but listen to this. If a judge tried to tell a general how to conduct a military operation, that would be illegal. If a judge tried to command the attorney general on how to use her discretion as a prosecutor, that is also illegal. Judges aren't allowed to control the executive's legitimate power. Of course, the key word there is legitimate. And that's something that needs to be litigated, I guess, because there's no legislature that's going to weigh in on it. So this is where we are right now, is they're saying that if judges don't go along with them, we need to get rid of the judges. Trump mentioned it yesterday. We're going to have to take a look at the judges. And of course, this is highly problematic and will cause a constitutional crisis, right? Because this was settled in 1803, Marbury versus Madison. And I can't see how the courts can remain courts if they don't have a way to enforce, or their rulings have no force to them. That's something that has to happen in order for us to have a third branch of government called the judiciary. So we're heading that direction, right? We're heading into a constitutional crisis. It's going to be up to the courts, I guess, to decide whether they're getting suitably cooperated with. And I think it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. But this is where we're headed. And by this time next week, we may be there already. So in conclusion, sorry for this soliloquy, but in conclusion, the judges, Judge Sotomayor, for example, has come out with a statement and said that she expects them to stand by the court decisions, whether they like it or not. And that statement today, she doesn't want to wade. She said she don't want to wade into the uproar, but she added that the founders and framers created a system of checks and balances, and they were hell bent on ensuring we don't have a monarchy, and that's where we're at.
Yeah, that's a great point. Here's where it comes down to it. People that talk about the United States, and they revere the Constitution. They Star Spangled Banner, wonderful. But the bottom line is that unless you're willing to accept all the Constitution for what it is, or change it, which you have the right to do, but it's a process. Unless you intend to do that, you can't get it all your own way. And again, we go back. This is like the fifth grader or the 5-year-old who has a tantrum because he isn't getting his own way. And J.D. Vance, that's kind of a surprise. Here's a guy that went to Yale Law School, for Christ's sakes. He should know better. He really should know better. Either that or they just handed him a degree, and the degree means nothing, because he should know better than what he's saying here. He should know that it's dangerous ground that he's talking here. He's talking about eliminating or ignoring the third branch of government. And one branch is not more important than the other. And the fact is that, governing is about compromise. Governing is about cooperation. Governing is about accepting you lose sometimes, which the Trump people have a real hard time with, because if they lose, it must have been cheated. Again, another fifth grade attitude out there on the playground. This is what makes government work. And when you start ignoring those standards of what makes society work, what makes a government work, now you're treading down a very dangerous path. Please do not then tell me how much you adore the Constitution. Do not stand there and say the Pledge of Allegiance and say, to the republic for which it stands. Don't do that, because you're talking, you're not walking the walk. You're just saying these things and shrouding it in, while you're trying to turn yourself into a pretzel to basically say, well, yeah, but whatever my guy does is fine. So again, hey, if this is the government you want, if you want the idea of a monarchy, hey, knock yourself out, whatever.
Or they should go somewhere else.
Or go say, yeah, there's plenty of places with monarchies. Go ahead. I mean, if you want a theocracy, I got a great place for you to move to. A great place. It's called Iran. Go have fun. Go there. They like theocracy. I mean, that's just good stuff. So yeah, go ahead.
So you brought up Vance, and I think you're right about it's hard to figure out what's going on there. I mean, he's probably just echoing everything that Trump and Musk say, but he knows. Like when he says a judge tries to, you know, a judge can't overrule a general. Well, okay, that's true. If a judge tried to tell a general how to conduct a military operation, that would be a ridiculous thing to do, right? He's correct about that. But that doesn't mean that, and he should know this, that there are 5 civilian judges that sit on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Armed Forces, and they have the highest level of jurisdiction over the military court system. Those are judges that can make rulings on things that happen in the armed forces. So he has to know that. Now, the Twitter audience that he's writing this to, they don't know that, right? So they go, yeah, he's right. He's making a great point. He's making a point, but it's not, it's not wholly true anyway. And he's dealing in bad faith there, I'm guessing, because he has to know that there is that court. And so, look, yeah, the court gets to pause, freeze, impede, block, cancel, or terminate. Or say that you can't do those things when it comes to paying for Medicaid and school lunches and low-income housing subsidies and other things that Congress has put money into. And this is where Russ Vought has long said he wants to go, because a lot of this stuff is anger over Watergate, believe it or not. And so the Impoundment Act of 1974 is what is going to go in front of the Supreme Court. I suppose we could talk about that a little bit more, but maybe for another time.
Well, and it also seemed to me, I was thinking about the Federal Marshal Service, and the Federal Marshal Service, they are under the executive branch. However, the Federal Marshal's role is to they serve and protect the federal judges, and they serve the Constitution. They swear an oath to the Constitution. So I don't know. I've heard different perspectives from different attorneys on whether the federal marshals will, if the executive branch tells them to arrest the federal judges, that one attorney said, that was George Conway, said that he thought the Federal Marshal Service would fold and would do what the executive branch wanted. Another, Glenn Kirshner, who worked with the federal marshals, said that he felt very strongly that the federal marshals would uphold the Constitution. If, for example, the federal judge were to hold individuals in criminal contempt of court, order the arrests of individuals. And now here is where I suppose Trump could pardon everybody involved. I don't know. But he himself has immunity, and I would expect that an aggrieved party would bring the immunity question back, would sue again. Can they bring that back before the Supreme Court about Trump's having immunity for criminal acts committed during his time in office? And can the Supreme Court rule on that again?
They have to bring a different argument. You just got to bring a different argument. That argument's already been. I mean, the Supreme Court won't take it up if they say, "Hey, we've already addressed this." Bring a different argument. Now we'll have a talk. And as far as this idea of,
what might the argument be?
I don't know.
Okay.
No idea. But the fact is that, we always, well, are they going to, go for the Constitution, or are they going to go for the president? Blah, 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 blah. Come on. First of all, everybody's supposed to be for the Constitution no matter what. The only people that don't seem to understand that is the executive branch at this point in time. And, what could happen? Well, I don't know. George Conway can say whatever he likes. All of these people can say whatever the heck they want to say. They don't know. I mean, if we haven't seen the terrible track record, they've almost got worse track record than we have as far as predicting things. They were all sure about all sorts of things with the Trump cases. Oh, yeah, George Conway being one. And I like George Conway. I listened to him, absolutely. I think his ex-wife's a little kooky, Kellyanne Conway, but hey, whatever. But the fact is that no. I mean, this idea of, well, George Conway said, well, yeah, George Conway, whatever, who cares? And, trying to predict who people will side upon, what side people will go on, I'm sorry, can't do it. I can't do it. The fact is that everybody should be all about the Constitution of the United States. Plain and simple. Not a party, not a person, but the Constitution of the United States. And the only people that I see right now that have forgotten that are the Republicans and the executive branch. So where that takes us, who knows?
And I mean, and to be fair, Trump yesterday said that he doesn't like the judges. He doesn't like anybody ruling against him, but he abides by their ruling. He says, "I always abide by the courts, but then I'll appeal it, and it'll go up to the Supreme Court, and they'll decide, and it'll take some time." So the real, the question as far as Doge is concerned was, they went in, they got the data that they were looking for. They have the files. There's nothing that can reverse that. So no court ruling can stop that from happening because it's already happened, and that's really, really scary stuff. But other than that, on a go forward basis, I mean, I'm not going to predict what the Federal Marshal Service is going to do. That's a ridiculous thing to do. I mean, Trump just last Thursday appointed a new head of the Federal Marshal Service. So she's got 35 years of law enforcement experience. He is, sworn to uphold the Constitution. And he was a U.S. Marshal for the Southern District of Florida. And is he going to abide by the law and the U.S. Constitution, or do what Trump through the Department of Justice tells him to do? It's an open question. We don't know yet. Maybe by this time next week we will know. But so far we don't.
Yeah, and I think there's too many people out there, and I think that's what's really killing the news, and infomercials or whatever the heck you want to call them today, is everybody has a prediction. And everybody listens to the person that makes the prediction that they like the best. I mean, that's just, the way it is. And that's the problem. I mean, it's QAnon for the left in some cases, as long as QAnon for the right. I mean, the fact is that none of these people have any. That's like if somebody says to me, well, Dr. Such and Such said, oh, wow. If they said, it must be written in stone. Let the 10 Commandments come down upon us. That's just not the way it was. I don't care how respected they are. They're only respected by half the people. The other half think they're idiots. And the fact, it's sort of like this here. Half the people that love us, love us. The other half people think we're complete, total idiots. Now, I'm not too sure who's right and who's wrong sometimes. But the fact is that that's the prerogative. If we have not shown that we cannot predict squat, and we've done it now for 3 years, and we haven't predicted this. I don't think we predicted a single thing right yet. And eventually we got to go back and take all those predictions and laugh at ourselves because we got them wrong.
I thought that the diametric perspectives were interesting. And
of course it is. There's two opposing viewpoints. Mm-hmm. Neither of them based on anything but air. I mean, what basis is there to predict that?
None.
We're really always in unprecedented territory. It seems, and we don't know what's going to happen. So why would we? I mean, I wouldn't predict that one. I might have predicted the Chiefs. I might have done that, but I'm not that. I don't think I did. I didn't really care one way or another. Did I? In the cast last week, did we even talk about the Super Bowl?
No.
I just so dislike both those teams, so I didn't really care.
Yeah.
And I had to have my 21-year-old explain the halftime show to me, because I didn't understand what was going on.
I didn't even watch it.
I didn't even
watch it. I never watched it.
There's apparently a lot going on there, but it was all over my head.
But yeah. So, and I think, Brooklyn, that's half the problem. is that people, listen to those that predict the Nostradamuses of whatever. And the fact is that they don't know any more than anybody else.
Right.
They're taking a wild guess.
Which is the good and the bad of social media, right? Because you get on now all of these people who, last week were experts on vaccines and the week before were experts on space travel or warfare. Now all of a sudden they know the federal marshals better than anybody else. And they just weigh in on things all the time without knowing it. The amazing thing to me is that there is a sizable part of the population that seems to think that Elon Musk has exposed fraud and has come out and said, this is fraud, this is fraud, this is fraud. I don't think that that's happened. So I'm not really sure what they're talking about. If he says there's fraud but offers no examples or no evidence, is it fraud?
Yeah, that was one of the points that was one of the points that the judge made. He said, if you find fraud, then bring me a specific instance of fraud. I don't want to hear a broad finding of anything. Well, we're looking for fraud. Well, come back when you found fraud. Don't come to me with this wild allegation. I listen to attorneys speaking because I want to have the law deconstructed so that I can understand what people are talking about. So I listen to a variety of attorneys.
But I think one of the things that people have to remember is the law is interpretable. That's why we have 9 judges of the Supreme Court, and they can rule on it in different ways.
Yes.
Right, and also the Supreme Court is a soft power. As we've said before, they don't have an army of their own that goes out there and enforces what their decisions are. They rely on the executive branch to do the right thing as they interpret it. And if the executive branch in the form of the federal marshals or the Department of Justice doesn't do that, then boom, we're in a constitutional crisis.
So what happens if, taking it to, going forward, if this regime continues to ignore federal judges, and then this goes to the Supreme Court, because Trump says, I always abide by this and that. He doesn't abide by what courts say. He hasn't paid the fines or whatever, as far as I know, for the New York State cases and whatever he was judged, adjudicated for, whatever he's supposed to owe E. Jean Carroll or whatever. What happens when he goes to the Supreme Court and if they find against him and he ignores it?
So, all right. So, Brooklyn, I'm going to put a little pushback here. He has complied. He has complied. He's whined about it. He's cried about it. He says it's all unfair. He's used things like witch hunts. But if a judge says you're going to do this, he has done it or he's appealed it, which is his right to do. He has delayed. He's used the system to be able to delay the inevitable. So the idea that he hasn't done it, that he has ignored them, actually, no. He's used the judicial system really quite well. And he has always stayed within, he has not been brought to contempt. So no, he has done everything that he's supposed to do. He's just manipulated it like he does everything else because it is manipulatable if you have enough money to do so.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for the correction.
The boundaries, right?
That's right.
He wants to stretch the envelope and see how much he can get away with, and then whines about it when he can't get away with it. I certainly don't want to make a prediction about this, but if the court,
here we go.
But
this is a prediction.
No, it's not. It's not going to be a prediction.
I can see him. He's scratching his face. He's going to make a prediction.
But if what I've been reading on Twitter a lot is like, so the Supreme Court ruled against Biden about student loans, and Biden ignored them. But that's not true. What Biden did is exactly what I would expect Trump would do. He went back to the drawing board and he found the new way to do it, and that ultimately got sent to the Supreme Court. But in the meantime, he's trying different things to make it happen. If you remember in the first Trump term, in the first month, or he tried to stop people coming in from certain countries, right? And the court ruled against him. He created a lot of chaos at the airports, but did absolutely nothing really other than that. Then they went back to the drawing board and they came up with another plan, and they put that out there, got sued, went through the system again, popped out on top to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said, "Oh no, you can't do that either." We went back to the drawing board. I mean, you can go back to the drawing board as many times as you want to try to get something done, and maybe you will hit on something that is legal. What he did in that particular case was he specified several countries that were not all Muslim countries to make it seem like it wasn't a Muslim ban, right? Because we don't do that here. We don't ask people what their religion is in the United States of America. We separate that from our government. And so he added a couple of countries that were not Muslim dominant, and that the Supreme Court said, okay, that one he can do. And so there were 7 countries, I think it was, it's a long time ago, I don't remember, that he was able to ban immigration from. So he ultimately, I think he found a way, and I'm sure he's going to continue to look for ways to get what he believes he needs to do.
Right.
The scary thing about Trump is that he always seems to diagnose the problem correctly but come up with the wrong solutions, which is, sign of a real idiot.
I mean, if we look at Roe versus Wade, it got Roe overturned. That argument's been made numerous times since the original ruling. It's come up numerous times. The question always came down to it. Somebody asked me one time, well, how do you feel about Roe versus Wade? I said, somebody's going to eventually either make the right argument or have the right court. One or the other. But you're going to make the right argument. Is there an argument to be made? Yeah, probably. There is an argument to be made. And that's like when you say, can they come back with the immunity thing? Sure they can. They just have to make a different argument, approach it from a different perspective. And yeah, a court might say, yeah, okay. Again, the court runs on a timeline. So the decision made a year ago can be revisited and the ruling could be overturned and a new ruling could come from it. That's the way the courts work. And like I said, Trump this is one of those cases where he's probably have to take him as saying a truth. He's never defied the court as in not done what they said he had to do. He's just used the court system to manipulate it and go back and forth and use that appeals. Okay, that's it. Let me find a different way to do it and hold it up and delay. And these are the things. The only thing that if you were to say, did he do anything illegal or possibly illegal? And it really wasn't him. It was that judge down in Florida, Eileen Cannon. I mean, she was absolutely, this was an easy one. But the fact is that Trump himself has basically stayed within the limits of the court. If not, he'd be wearing a big orange jumpsuit to go along with his big orange face. But okay, whatever. Is that good?
Make you feel better, Brooke?
Make you feel better,
yeah,
Brooke?
Well, I appreciate the correction. No, it doesn't make me feel better. I just feel more informed, which is what I'm after, is to be, better educated and better informed.
Well, that's it.
Yep. So thank you both. And thank you to our listeners. And I hope everyone is better informed and better educated. That's our goal. And please keep the emails and questions and comments coming. And we will see you again next time on the Nova Society.
The Nova Society is a production of Nova Society Media, a division of the Phoenix Research Institute. We'd like to thank our production partners, Buzzsprout, who hosts the Nova Society, Audacity, our editing partners, Apple iTunes, the largest source of podcasts and music on the internet, Spotify, the most popular platform for the Nova Society, and iHeartRadio, your source for all things music and podcasting. The Nova Society is available on all of these and other quality platforms listed in our description. We'd also like to thank all of our listeners. Without your support, the Nova Society would not be possible. If you have a question or a comment, we can be reached at nova.society.podcast@gmail.com. So for Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, Dr. Priscilla Hobbs, Dr. Scott Gershwer, and all of us here at the Nova Society, I'm Dr. Mark Bound. Remember, the true power in society is knowledge. Thanks for listening, and we will see you again next time.
Hi, Hi, everyone. This is JJ, the co-founder of Good Pods. If you haven't heard of it yet, Good Pods is like Goodreads or Instagram, but for podcasts. It's new, it's social, it's different, and it's growing really fast. There are more than 2 million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the #1 way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening!